It is a Friday, so on a lighter note, we take a look at the business behind the music industry. And joining me in studio is Antos Stella, MD at Content Connect Africa, and King Phatudi-Mphahlele, who's director at the National Organization for Reproduction Rights in Music in South Africa. Thanks and welcome to you both. Thanks so much for joining me in studio. Well, perhaps let's start off with you, King. Just taking a look at the music industry in South Africa and what the state of the music industry actually is.
I think by now everybody can tell that the game has changed. The independents are more dominant. Young people are doing more in music. They're not dependent on major companies. So I mean, the investment structures have become very different. So the state right now is that we're looking at a place where people are seeing the opportunities in the digital world, and that's going to be the future.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at it from your perspective, Antos, because, you know, we've got a title of a session being run at the upcoming Mashito Music Conference and Exhibition being Mzansi's Golden Economy, the DAC, the DTI and the music industry strategy. I didn't even know that, you know, something an organization like the DTI had a strategy within the music industry.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's so much going on at the moment. Basically, we've seen the spectacular crash of the music industry globally. And out of the ashes is rising an entirely new industry. And I agree with King. I think that we're seeing a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of young independent labels coming up. We're seeing a whole lot more opportunity as far as revenue is concerned, through sponsorships, through branding. Music is specifically something that is an export, and basically besides the revenue that it can possibly generate on our continent, not only in South Africa, but internationally, the DTI and the Department of Arts and Culture see the opportunities, and they are giving these platforms to the music industry. I think that, I mean, well, one case that I'm involved in a lot, both with the DTI and DAC, is the platform that they have at Midem, which is the biggest music conference in the world, in the south of France. They always have a South African pavilion, and that is an opportunity for South African artists, producers and record labels, independents, to showcase their product and to look at export opportunities. So I think we're in very exciting times.
King, being a player in the industry, I mean, you know, we've had Antos here highlight just another conference. We've got, as I said, the Mashito Music Conference underway as well. How beneficial are conferences like these? Because whenever conferences come through, and no matter what industry we're looking at, it's often labeled as a talk shop and nothing else, where, you know, actual implementation of what's discussed at those fora are not actually followed through with.
I mean, our view is pretty simple. There's a difference between just talking and thought leading. And the most important thing in any industry, whether it's finance or you should be able to have heads that can lead the thought process of what happens in the next years of any industry. So Mashito is one of those places where people come together, they share thoughts, they look at strategies that people have implemented, what has worked, what hasn't worked, they discuss about what's going to happen. Government has actually implemented a lot of things from Mashito in the last 6-7 years we've been around. So it's not just a talk shop. I mean, I remember when Mashito starting, I was just a record producer. Now I sit on the board of Mashito also, and so it's not a place where we just blah 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 and, you know, nothing really happens.
Of course, it's all about leveraging off the opportunities, because Antos also highlighted that, you know, revenue is starting to come through, and perhaps more so than we've historically seen. So let's take a look at that growth and the progress we're making in that regard. Is this becoming a lucrative enough industry, a lucrative enough career for people to pursue?
Interesting is people think music business is about being an artist, and it's really not. There's so much to make. I mean, you look at a song, there's like about 3, 4, 5 copyrights that exist in one song, which is like from the publishing side, from the master ownership side, and now we've got like needle time collection, performance rights. So like you're looking at like just a collection of royalties of you know, overall. So I think most people now, we've kind of like, we all agree that the 360-degree model is the best model now, because there's so much rights, but the business had always been split up. You had always had management separate, merchandising separate, record business separate, publishing separate, and eventing separate. And now everybody realizes that you actually now selling one thing. You need a collective approach from an investment point of view, not necessarily from an operations point of view. So from a revenue point, it's a lucrative business.
Absolutely. Of course, one would assume that there are challenges to getting it right. I mean, we've had King highlighted that, you know, they've been able to suss out so far what has worked, what hasn't worked. Give us an example of a challenge that the industry has, or making it in the industry has faced, and how we've seen perhaps a bit of a turnaround in that regard.
Well, I think that we sit in a very unique position being on this continent, and I think that, I mean, you know, artists, copyright owners, composers have the opportunity to embrace their own copyrights, their own creativity, and do deals that will spin not only revenue for themselves, but create jobs as well. And I refer back to what King was saying, this whole conversation about the 360 deal. You know, I think that Africa is a very unique continent. We have this wealth of content which has never really been completely exploited. And now you see suddenly territories like Nigeria bursting. The music industry is a very lucrative business because the artists have positioned themselves as businessmen and businesswomen and business people, and they see this business as an entity. And I love to use the example of, we have networks now that use music. There are platforms to download. There is a perfect revenue, and you do not have to go through one major label. You can negotiate there. So suddenly we've got different businesses mushrooming. You know, we've got aggregators, we've got branding and sponsorship. We have, you know, the live performances. I mean, live performances, even whilst the music industry was crashing, artists were able to earn. But we need to look at the next sector. It's not only just the artists. We're creating, I think that a wonderful opportunity is, I think that SARA, the South African Roadies Association, skills development, creating jobs, so that people can go and be at the back end of the music industry in terms of stage management, technical. So, and because we're seeing so many more live performances right throughout our continent, be it with international artists, but specifically with artists from our continent, there's a whole job creation opportunity.
Where we are looking at integration that way, are we seeing regional integration? Because you mentioned, you know, the African continent and the kind of talent we boast and industries that are booming, but the perception is that all of those kind of happen in silos. So within Nigeria's borders, within South Africa's borders, are we seeing that regional expansion?
I see it changing. I see it changing. I don't see it changing as fast as it should, but what really, really excites me is that I see so much collaboration between artists, South African artists, and artists from the rest of Africa. There's a lot of performances that are happening. We see Africa Day celebrations. We see, I think, even right to the festivals that are happening, you know, coming up, and the festivals that happened in the past. More and more African artists are being invited to perform on those stages. And that is creating collaborations. And so we're starting to see this industry with performances moving across our borders. And I think that in certain territories there's skills development, even in South Africa, but this is when I talk about job opportunities. Absolutely. I think that there's huge opportunity for us to take and to skills develop in different territories and create jobs.